Flipping the pyramid.
We fed bread, the law like bread. Give the crumbs to the rest. Down, crescent man, we won't stop until you're dead.
And now, live from England, bringing you news and analysis that you won't find on the corporate and government mainstream media. It's the WideShut Webcast.
Good evening. That was Broken Dialect with Oppression. How's everybody doing on this fine wintry day? You are of course tuned in to another episode of the WideShut Webcast. I'm your host Keelan Balderson, and as always we're first coming to you live at 8 PM GMT on FTP Radio. That's flippingthepyramid.co.uk, and an archive of the show can be found on my website wideshut.co.uk shortly after the first broadcast. You can download the MP3 directly. You can subscribe via iTunes. There's the Stitcher mobile application to listen easily on your mobile or cell phone. And there's always the good old YouTube version up there as well. All of that on wideshut.co.uk. Now, last week we got into some of the latest on the Mark Duggan case, the shooting of Mark Duggan, which of course was the initial spark that led to the rioting across the UK in the summer of 2011. We went over the trial of the man accused of supplying Duggan with a firearm, and from that trial, I at least think we deduced that the police are still lying about his death and what went down that day. They initially said they shot him because he had fired at them first, so they had to shoot him dead and neutralise him because he was a danger and was firing at them. But then the ballistics tests proved that that was a lie and only the police had fired weapons. Then at this trial, the new story was that he was simply holding the gun and they felt threatened, so they shot him. But another officer at the scene didn't recall him having a gun on his person, and he said it seemed like he was trying to run away rather than, stay and have a shootout with them. And it was then revealed that Duggan's alleged weapon was actually found some 14 or more feet away from him, the other side of a fence in some bushes, which again proves that the majority of the police involved in this case are lying about what happened. As an expert said at the trial, it's highly unlikely that if Duggan had been shot because he had a gun on his person, that gun would have ended up nowhere near his body. If it's on your person and you're shot dead, the gun is right next to you. And I played clips from Sky News, which I feature in my film. Eyewitness reports that police had been hiding in the bushes in the days before Duggan was killed, the same bushes where this gun was found. So it's possible evidence was planted prior to the intercept and the murder of Duggan. It's also possible that the police just ruined the crime scene and incompetently moved things around and messed everything up. It was reported that the taxi Duggan was riding in before it was pulled over and he was shot dead, that taxi was taken away from the scene and then brought back again later. So tampering of the scene is also a possibility, where the gun was found by one officer might not actually have been where the gun was to begin with, because there's all this trampling of the crime scene. It's also possible that Duggan didn't have the gun on him. It may have still been in the taxi or somewhere else, and police, trying to cover their asses for murdering this guy, then planted it in the bushes rather than it being planted a few days before during some kind of operation that eyewitnesses saw with police hiding in the bushes. Whatever happened, the current version of events is clearly a lie, because everything put forward contradicts itself. Now, something I want to go over again with people today is the timeline of Duggan's death and how that relates to the rioting. In a nutshell, what happened was Duggan was shot dead on August 4th. There was no proper liaison with the family. They weren't really informed what happened, why their son, friend and neighbour had been killed. And as we know, the police were initially lying anyway. And this caused a lot of tension within the local community, because as we've talked about before, there's a lot of distrust of the police because of these kinds of incidents that have happened in the past. And the blanket approach to crime and gang culture and things like that. It's very much an us versus them mentality in that area. So 2 days later, after the family find out that their son had been killed and weren't given any answers by the police as to why that took place, family and neighbours march to the police station and hold a peaceful protest. And here's a clip from my film Perfect Storm: The England Riots, showing or giving one side, one account of what happened next. Since 1998, at least 333 people have died while in police custody. Not one officer has been convicted. It is then understandable why Duggan's community wanted answers.
When we talk about the riots, we still have to go back into the stem of why the riots started, and that's because Mark died, whether people like it or not, whether people know him or not, but he is the reason why everything has started. And right now, when they do pull up stuff about his death and little things that was important at the time, it's like they're not important no more because of the rioting and the looting that the media and the government is highlighting more than his death.
We want justice! We want it now!
After being ignored 2 days after Duggan's death on August 6th, the community went to the local police station to exercise their lawful right to protest.
We want answers for the family, for Mark Duggan. We have been given no answers. The family haven't been told anything as to why Mark Duggan was shot on Thursday.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the protest started quite peacefully, right? There was about 150 people outside the police station, and they was out there, there was 5 patients. All they wanted was a few answers as to what was happening. The police completely ignored them, you know what I mean, just treated them with contempt. And even at that point, they didn't retaliate.
And right now, the whole of Tottenham is mourning because of that. The whole of the community that know him, they're hurt, which is justifiable. You see what I'm saying? And we need answers.
And what would you say like the relationship is like with the police now in Tottenham?
Honestly, there wasn't really any relationship with police.
There is no question that this was an execution-style killing.
Now the answers has come out that it's true what we were saying. So what we was thinking was true in the start. So it's like, right, hold on. You said one thing, and it wasn't even that. Now we're hearing that how, do you see where I'm coming from? He didn't even shoot. So it's like, really, what's going on? You know what I'm saying?
Tension built as police refused to answer questions. All that was needed was a lack of judgment, and the crowd would reach a boiling point. It soon came.
And then, a young 16-year-old approximately went to approach them just to, again, find out roughly what's going on. And they just took some evasive action by pushing her and then drawing their batons. And that's when the people them started to retaliate.
Record that, record that. Get them! Yaki in the elevator! Get them! Get them!
It's a girl!
Get them!
It's a girl! It's a girl! Look how he's dealing with her! It's a girl! It's a girl! It's a girl! You It's a girl! You
I've been sort of caught in the middle of it since around 5 o'clock this afternoon, and before you know, everything started to kick off, what actually ignited everything is a young female had approached the police standing line, and she was set up on by police with their batons.
What do you mean by set up? Sorry to interrupt you. What do you mean by set upon?
Well, the police line, they had the line stood there, had actually charged towards her and started hitting her with the baton. Subsequently, it turned out she was only 16, and this absolutely made everyone go up in uproar.
They beat up a girl. They've hit up a girl. The girl's on the floor. The police, have you seen it? Didn't you just see the police stomped at a girl? And then from there, that's all I know. Next minute,
So the police, you say
cars are on fire.
So there in my film, you can see from several eyewitnesses, news reports, and actually in the DVD version that you can get on torrent, you can download it via BitTorrent, or you can buy it if you like from my website. I even found the footage of the 16-year-old girl. Unfortunately, I put the YouTube version up before I found this footage, so this is only on the DVD version. But the footage or the aftermath of what happened to her is in the documentary. People screaming about it, you know, that's a young girl, get off her. So at that time, it was quite clear that the rioting started after the police clamped down on a legal, peaceful and morally justified protest by beating on a young girl. Their poor decisions caused the rioting. They shoot a man and cover up what happened, and then beat on a young girl when the community wants answers. Who's to blame for the rioting then? But despite those eyewitnesses saying the violence began after the police beat a young girl, the latest mainstream media reports make no mention of it. This is how the reports are reading today. 6 sentenced for part in last year's riots. 6 men who sparked mass disorder across Britain by turning a protest over the death of Mark Duggan into a riot have been locked up for a total of nearly 12 years. The thugs, including a boy from Palmer's Green, took part in the demonstration outside Tottenham Police Station 2 days after Mark Duggan was shot dead by police. Marcus Knox Hook, 31, was a close childhood friend of Duggan who went along to the protest on August 6th last year, Wood Green Crown Court heard. But he ended up joining others who set about trashing a police car before joining Dwayne Newland, 23, Jamal Mullings and Sean O'Neill, both 19, and Ashley Fagan, and Isaac Amua, both 17, in the looting. A judge handed 6 sentences totaling 11 years and 7 months. Prosecutor Jane Osborne described how the peaceful protest turned into violence when darkness fell. She said a group began to attack police vehicles and to break into premises. And when police officers attempted to intervene and calm down the violence, they were attacked with missiles. See how it's been flipped? No mention of police attacking a young girl. Just, they out of nowhere, they just started trashing a police car, and then when the police tried to calm everything down, the police were hit with missiles. Maybe the police beat up a young girl and were being aggressive and evasive on the issue, and boiled everybody over. Maybe that's how it happened. I'm just saying. According to eyewitnesses, on the day, and on BBC that day, that's what happened. A young girl was attacked and the people retaliated. It wasn't the people that started it. This is police shooting a man and then clearly lying about how it happened. And then ignoring the family's questions when they ask, why did it happen? And then beating on a young girl. Where's the share of the blame for Tottenham police? Why are they not being criticised in the media? Why is it written that prosecutor Jane Osborne described how the peaceful protest turned into violence, and then goes on to not describe how it happened at all? Why do they keep trying to say it was mindless and random with no causes? And again, I'm not going to condone what the riots became, looting and vandalising local businesses and property. But the government and the mainstream media insist on trying to paint an image that completely ignores any wrongdoing from the police and the establishment. As I said last week, justice is for everybody, whether they're a drug dealer or a middle-class businessman. Everybody deserves justice. Everybody deserves truth. And we've not got that at all in this Mark Duggan case and the subsequent riots. They just keep trying to paint this pretty picture that, thugs and feral youths did this for no reason, they need to be smacked some more. When there are very clear points of contention. We're going to go for our first break now, and when we come back, we're going to change stories and take another look at the quasi-Mohammed Federal Reserve bomb plot / FBI sting operation / FBI entrapment case. Don't go anywhere, keep it locked here on the WideShut Webcast.
Flipping the pyramid. Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.co.uk.
Flip the pyramid. Turning that pyramid on its head. Flipping the pyramid. Flip the pyramid. Flipping the pyramid. Flip the pyramid. Flipping the pyramid.co.uk. Flipping the pyramid. Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.co.uk.
Flipping the pyramid. Flipping the whole paradigm of that hierarchical system on its head.
Flipping the pyramid. www.flippingthepyramid.co.uk.
Welcome back to the WideShut Webcast. I'm your host, Keelan Balderson, and I want to revisit this quote, Federal Reserve bomb plot. Not much has come out since the initial arrest. All we've got to go on really is this federal complaint, which you can get the PDF in my article on the website. But in a nutshell, just to recap, this story is about a young man, Quasi-Mohammed from Bangladesh, who came to New York to study. He was on a student visa, and then out of nowhere, the FBI claim he was looking to start a terrorist cell, a group of jihadis. So they sent in, or supposedly sent in, an informant to keep an eye on this guy. They don't tell you what supposed radical things he was saying, where he was supposed to have been when he was saying them, you know, which mosque was he at, who was he connected to, who were his online contacts, you know, how did it come about that he was on the FBI's radar? We're just told to assume that there was a good enough reason for him to be on the radar, but none of the details of why or how. For all we know, he could have just been groomed from the day he set foot in the US by informants working for the FBI. But for whatever reason, the FBI have basically started the story halfway through, by which point an informant is already monitoring him. That's red flag number one for me. A lack of background about his radicalization, because nobody in Bangladesh said he was radical. His parents, you know, have been going to the Bangladeshi government saying you need to get him home. He didn't do this, we didn't see this, there were no signs, and they would say that anyway. But the burden of proof right now is on the United States to prove that this guy was doing what they claim he was doing. We then have to remember that the informant, the guy that supposedly tracked him and recorded him saying things and was there at each stage as this bomb plot took off, we also have to remember that that informant was somebody already facing charges themselves. He was given the opportunity to work for the FBI for reduced punishment. That's how it works. A lot of these people are criminals that they just flip and give them a deal if they'll go in undercover and do something for them. You become the FBI's bitch. So what is this person who's a criminal facing, you know, God knows how many years in prison or whatever it was, who's got a family maybe to support or whatever, what is this person prepared to do to save his own ass, to make his own future a little bit brighter? Will he make stuff up? Will he cherry pick things to give the FBI what he thinks they want to hear in hope that they treat him right? What makes this criminal truthful in his role as an informant? And I go through many of these points in the article, and I also had Tom Secker on a few months ago now to talk about this. But there's also the fact that the FBI supplied him with the fake bomb, that the FBI did the driving, the FBI pretended to be Al-Qaeda. How legitimate can this Al-Qaeda threat be if the only Al-Qaeda this guy was in contact with was actually just the FBI? and who are Al-Qaeda anyway? It's claimed in this complaint that he was inspired by Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, apart from the fact that this alleged link to Awlaki came from the police officer undercover in his vehicle that morning, and he just supposedly managed to slip that out before they went and did this, what turned out to be fake attack. You know, if we believe this officer and that's true, well, who's Anwar al-Awlaki anyway? He just happened to be dining at the Pentagon after 9/11 in some kind of outreach program to Muslim leaders. He's been linked to every other FBI entrapment case, dud attacks, fake bombings, you know, all of them. For an army of terrorists hell-bent on attacking the US, they're pretty crap at it, but they're pretty good at giving the US machine its sensationalist headlines, which just also so happen to support all their other illegal wars everywhere else and the stealing of people's freedoms in the United States. So there are some red flags here that lead me to question what we've been told and lead me to be keeping a close eye on this case as it develops. So far there hasn't really been anything more than the official federal complaint when he was arrested. So this is what I wrote at the end of the article. So was Nassif a legitimate threat? Would he have come in contact with real Al-Qaeda members if left alone? And would he really have been able to create a bomb and get it to his destination without the FBI? There should be a lot more to come out about this case going forward. As it stands currently, Nafis was magically radicalised and magically drew the attention of a confidential informant working for the FBI. Until we know how these two things came about, i.e. through which mosque or which websites, and what the specific evidence is, we cannot rule out the possibility of a wider network, or a wider and more sinister sting operation being involved. Of course, we also need to wait and see if the claims made in the complaint are backed up by solid evidence in the first place. These things are never as airtight as they seem. Was Nafis really the one pushing the plot along, or was he selected and groomed at various stages? And are people like Al-Lockie themselves actually informants or assets of the intelligence agencies? Lots of these characters have been proven to be. Was Al-Lockie another one of those? It's possible. So I wrote the basic article on that a few weeks ago, or months ago even, and we had Tom on to talk about it. But what I wanted to point out today is something that went over my head the first time around, and which has re-emerged during a bit of recent coverage about the actual indictment now being released as well. Some media picked up on that. And this is out of the Bloomberg Business Week section of the Bloomberg website. Nafis, who has been living in Queens, New York, came to the US using a student visa and told an informant for the FBI that he wanted to engage in jihad, according to a criminal complaint filed in the case. The informant referred Nafis to an FBI informant posing as a member of Al-Qaeda after he expressed interest in receiving help from the group, according to the complaint. In a video statement made just before the bombing attempt, Nafis said, "We will not stop until we attain victory or martyrdom," while covering his face, disguising his voice, and wearing sunglasses. That's the point that kind of went over my head when I first looked into this. That he made a video supposedly just before his arrest, but he was in a disguise, covering his face, changing his voice, which makes you wonder about a few things. You know, it might not mean anything. It could be completely irrelevant to whether the FBI were grooming him or even whether he was a legitimate threat. But I always have to consider whether there's any shenanigans going on when we get these supposed video evidence tapes of terrorists, tapes of people making confessions, saying certain things, because there's a long track record of these kinds of videos ultimately being used to deceive people. Whether it's the video of Bin Laden admitting to being involved in 9/11, only for it to be retranslated and found to be completely lacking what the US State Department said was on it. There was no admission. Whether it's people playing fake terrorists like Adam Gaddan, the infamous grandson of an ADL chief, pretending to be a leader in Al-Qaeda, a Jewish leader of Al-Qaeda. Tapes have been taken out of context, like the supposed martyrdom confession tapes on 7/7, when in none of the videos did Tanweer or Khan talk about terrorism or killing themselves in suicide attacks. It's complete propaganda. We've had CIA admissions of wanting to stage fake Bin Laden videos. And we've had videos of Bin Laden that do look fake and have been re-released and look to be spliced together. Then we have audio tapes that cannot be, authenticated, but the media runs with them anyway to build up the picture, even though when you go through each case, it simply doesn't hold up. So because of all that, I'm always wary of alleged videotape confessions and evidence of Al-Qaeda terrorists. If he's disguised and distorted his voice and covered his face, why do the FBI need it as evidence? And why does it need to be talked about in the media as proof? Because the fact that he disguised his face and changed his voice and hid away when he made the tape tells me that it can't be proved to be him in the first place. You know? Is this just going to be another case where they throw a lot of crap out there. Oh, there's a tape. Oh, there's this. Oh, this happened. So in general, it seems like the guy is guilty. But then when you do the digging, there's actually just a lot of ambiguous elements to it. Such as this footage, which doesn't seem like it really proves anything. There's a video of him, he's disguised. Well, how do you know it's a video of him then? So I am looking forward here and speculating a bit, but it was just something that I thought was worth making a note of for future reference. For example, if at the trial they try and put a lot of weight behind this video, because there might not be much else, as used as evidence. That's when I'd start stroking my beard and going, so what is this video? Are we going to see this video? Is it actually him in this video? It's just something I want to throw out there as a bookmark that we can flip back to sometime in the future as this whole story develops. But something else that I'm skeptical about, along the same lines as some of this, is the alleged assassination of Osama bin Laden. And we've been over this a number of times on the show, but to cut a long story short, I'm skeptical of the alleged assassination of bin Laden for the simple fact that the US government haven't provided any evidence to the public that they did assassinate Osama bin Laden. They've not had any experts to verify that they killed him. No other country has been given evidence to prove what the US says happened. They just say that they killed him. We don't have the body, do we? It was buried at sea. They haven't given out the DNA that they claim they have. They said they'd show pictures, but then changed their mind because they're afraid that it might upset us. Because they're very nasty looking and gruesome, and we can't show those things to the public, even though we showed Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein being hung and all these other things. This time we're going to pretend that we're caring about what you see. I mean, even if that's true, does the government have the right to coddle us and to keep things away from us because it might upset us? Is that the level that we put our government at? Are they our mummy and daddy? No. We need to know what they're up to, and we need to see the evidence. And the other excuse was, oh well, if we show these images of a dead bin Laden, then it'll make terrorists angry. Well, I guess they don't believe you then, if they're not already angry. You said you've killed him. If they actually believe that you have killed him, then surely they'd be angry already, whether you released photos or not. Maybe they don't believe you like I don't. There's just a torrent of bullshit surrounding this whole story. The fake Situation Room photo, where they claimed to have watched the raid live, and all of the Hillary Clintons and everyone are sitting there, going, ooh, looking at this screen, all posed, ready for the photo. And then it turns out, oh no, there wasn't actually a live feed. Oh no, they weren't actually watching it. So they basically admitted that the photo was fake. And then in some versions of the photo, Hillary Clinton wasn't even in it. So there were so many different elements of Photoshop to it. You can't even tell what the original photo actually looked like. Some of them, Hillary wasn't even in it. It's all a load of rubbish. And why would you kill the leader of a group who you claim to be fighting all over the world when you could, I don't know, get information from him about future plans? If this was his supposed headquarters, the terrorist den of Al-Qaeda where everything is signed off on, then why didn't they capture him and interrogate him and get all of his knowledge? And of course they tried to explain that away initially by saying he fired first, then he didn't, he was holding his wife hostage, then he wasn't. It's all a load of bollocks. There's so many elements that make this story unbelievable. And obviously, regardless of that there's no evidence, that there's a lot to suggest he died many years ago, some people are still going to call it a conspiracy theory, even though by definition the official account is a theory yet to be proven by evidence, and asking for evidence is simply a rational and scientific method to approach these kind of things. But regardless, the old conspiracy theory label has been slapped onto people that question the Bin Laden killing, as it has been for 9/11 and all sorts of other things. And you know, a common thing that people use for nearly all of these kinds of events that seem dodgy is that, too many people would have had to have been in on it for this to be a lie. Somebody would have said something. How can they keep it a secret that it wasn't really Bin Laden they killed, or that they didn't kill Bin Laden at all, or anyone at all, or whatever? They just simply couldn't have kept it a secret. Really? Well, how many people do need to be in on it? Think about it. The US military is a top-down, do as you're told, don't ask questions type of system. The SEAL team, who themselves have conflicting stories, one of them came out with a book. Probably deep propaganda to muddy the waters even further, but the people alleged to have killed him can't even agree on what happened. But my point was going to be, military men are just told what to do and what to think. It's not hard to keep secrets from them. You could have just said, Bin Laden is in that house, and they may have just killed a man with a beard. Akbar Han, somebody's neighbour, as one of the locals told the BBC. That's not Bin Laden, it's my neighbour Akbar, or whatever he said. I can't really remember, but he was saying it was his neighbour. So why do a vast number of people need to be in on it? The military is set up in such a way that people don't know what's really happening and where orders are coming from and what they really mean. And here's a recent article from the Daily Mail that shows that there weren't that many people in on it, whatever it really is. Revealed military emails show that no US sailors witnessed Osama bin Laden's secret burial at sea. So you can't provide a body because you buried him at sea, and nobody really saw you bury him at sea anyway. Nothing to see here, folks. Quite literally, nothing to see here. There was nothing to see, and nobody to see it, and nobody says they did see it. Internal emails among US military officers indicate that no American sailor watched Osama bin Laden's burial at sea from the USS Carl Vinson. The emails obtained by the Associated Press through a Freedom of Information Act are heavily blacked out, but are the first public disclosure of government information about the Al-Qaeda leader's death. Only a small group of the ship's leadership was informed of the burial. So not only is there no evidence that they killed him and buried him like they claim, but there's now email evidence that proves only a handful of people were in on whatever it was that took place. And I mean, folks, the whole burial thing itself is a massive joke. Remember, after it happened, they immediately painted this picture that what they did was a traditional Muslim burial within Islamic law. Now, they may have said prayers and waited X amount of hours and washed the body this way or whatever, who the hell knows? And obviously it might have even been Laden if they be Bin Laden if they did that. But it's not traditional to throw a dead Muslim into the sea. And it took Islamic experts to come on the news and point out the absurdity of those claims. that it was within Islamic tradition to lob him overboard of a ship. It doesn't make much sense. But they kept hammering home this idea, traditional Muslim burial, traditional Muslim burial. And something I actually discovered at the time, which was picked up by the alternative media at least, was that Wikipedia was pre-edited for that news cycle. Traditional Muslim burial. And what I mean is, as the mainstream media were repeating on every channel that he got this traditional Muslim burial in line with Islamic law, the Muslim burial Wikipedia page was mysteriously edited to include a paragraph about burial at sea. Now this hadn't been on there before, and last time I checked it was removed because it's not part of Islamic tradition. There's no need for a burial at sea paragraph on the Wikipedia page. But on that day it was edited so people who heard the news cycles, traditional Muslim burial, in line with Islamic law, they might have gone, oh, is that true? Islamic burial, Wikipedia. Oh look, it says burial at sea. Just an added layer of propaganda to get that talking point out there and to make people believe it. And that's really just a small part of it. It's not, it's not a smoking gun. It's not that important. It doesn't really matter how they claim to have buried him, because they haven't proven that they did. They just say they did. They haven't proven that they killed him. They just say they killed him. But I think it's just an interesting example to show the cracks in the story. If they didn't kill him, but wanted to lie that they did, how could they do it without having to present a body as evidence? How could they deny the evidence but still make the claim? Well, if you bury somebody at sea, there's no body to show anybody, is there? Perhaps they'll have a fake Bin Laden wash up on shore somewhere just to shut us all up. Who knows? But just on the topic of Bin Laden, before we go tonight, he's going to be featured heavily in my new documentary series, which I start work on in the new year, Strange Bedfellows, Islamic Terrorists and the West, a shocking investigation into the hand-in-glove relationship between Western governments and Muslim terrorists. $420 donated so far for the project. Thanks to everyone that has donated so far. There's 42 days left to donate, at least through the Indiegogo page. I'll paste that link in. I'm always accepting donations regardless, and I'll still be making the series whether I reach the 2,000 goal or not. That was always the plan. This isn't necessarily the funding platform. I was always going to make it. It's just a token amount for me to help me focus my time on the film rather than on my day job. If you've got a pot there of money, then you can slack off for a few days. Since I work for myself, it's up to me when I work, so having a little pot of money can then help me focus on actually knuckling down and doing the film. But yeah, Bin Laden will be featured in the Strange Bedfellows series. I'm aiming for several 1-hour episodes dealing with each aspect of Western governments colluding with Islamic extremists and terrorists. And there is a lot to go on with Mr. Bin Laden, whether it's his family's ties to Western businesses. The Bush family were very much business partners of the Bin Ladens in the years before 9/11. As I've constantly hammered home on this show and in my previous videos, Bin Laden worked alongside the American CIA during the Soviet-Afghan War. He was a direct liaison, according to his own brother. It was known as Operation Cyclone, backing the extreme elements of the Islamic fundamentalists in Afghanistan and mercenaries from further afield to take away the Russian communist influence in that region. So obviously going to the Islamic extremist was a good way to stoke the fires against the atheist communists. And Sybil Edmonds has had some very interesting things to say about the relationship with bin Laden, even up until the day of 9/11 itself. So bin Laden was very much the West's friend. Then all of a sudden he was the boogeyman face of the new enemy, Muslim terrorists, the very groups we supported and actually continue to support to this day in Syria, in Libya, a bit further back in the 90s in the Balkans. So I'm going to be knuckling down in the new year to get this series going, looking at all these different elements of collusion, and bin Laden will be, I'm going to give him a full episode. There is a lot that we can delve into there. Now, if you're not donating to the project but want to stay up to date and eventually watch the film, then make sure you subscribe to my YouTube page, youtube.com/WideShut UK. Had a bit of a shock the other week. They removed my unlimited length uploads, which would destroy my channel because it's always full of, hour-long radio shows and multiple hour documentaries that I make and things like that. So having the unlimited upload is a must for me, and they took it down, and I kind of whittled it away and realised that the reason they did that was because of the Channel 4 documentary that I uploaded months ago now, on the Yvonne Fletcher shooting, which was blamed on Libya, but an old Channel 4 documentary basically worked out that no, it wasn't Libya that shot Yvonne Fletcher. It could have been some proxy groups colluding with the security services. It could have been the security services themselves, because the bullet likely came from a building that was rented by MI5. So that film was basically limiting my uploads, because Channel 4, after months and months, decided they were going to take it down for copyright reasons. So I deleted the film, and then my uploads went back to normal. So I don't know where I'm going with this. Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/WideShut UK. That's where all my other films are located. That's where I put archives of this show, people I've interviewed, people who have interviewed me, some of the protests. I've only been on a few really, but some of the Occupy and things like that, some of the meets that we've had in the past. Lots of good content there to sink your teeth into. I think one of the problems is that there's so much there, so many shows and so many videos, nobody really knows where to start. But be sure to add me on there. I'm also on Twitter at AltNewsUK. That's ALT News UK, Alt News UK, and you can get all the Twitter links and the Facebook links and the YouTube links and everything that you need to follow me and stay updated at wideshut.co.uk. That about wraps things up for this week. I'll be back next week, hopefully doing a show on UKIP and why they probably, or in my opinion certainly, aren't actually worth voting for in domestic elections. They've got a lot of hype because they're the anti-EU party. Nigel Farage appears sometimes on the Alex Jones show, which kind of gives him a stamp of approval from some people. Obviously Lord Monckton, part of UKIP, is one of the leading voices in the global warming, or the global warming isn't really a problem movement, which I support. But the domestic policies of UKIP aren't really what you'd expect them to be, and they certainly should not get any power in this country, if you ask me. So we're going to be going into that next week. At least that's how I've planned it, unless something major comes up. Tomorrow night here on FTP is Chris Morris, Chris has been on my show a couple of times to talk about the EU. Good to see that he's branching out into his own show. Always a wealth of information from Chris Morris. I'm not sure if his book's still on sale or if it ever got published. Can't remember what he said. I think he's got a publisher and it's coming soon. But whenever you can, check out his book, The Anglo-American Establishment and the Rising, I can't quite remember the name, kind of a play off the old Carol Quigley book title, I think. But be sure to check out Chris's show tomorrow. That's Wednesday at 8 PM GMT. His show is Breakdown, and you can catch it at flippingthepyramid.co.uk. But from me, Keelan Balderson, I'm rambling. I'll catch you next week on the WideShut Webcast.
If you found the preceding information valuable, please consider buying a DVD or making a small donation of your choosing. Go to wideshut.co.uk/donate. That's wideshut.co.uk/donate. You are the resistance.